All right. So today we have a much requested topic. Sorry again for the delay. Just want to have that saved for posterity. Had a family emergency. Everyone is okay. But here we are. We're going to talk about preventing Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. Huge, huge topic. Like I said, literally one of the most requested. So hopefully lots of people will enjoy this. There we go. Okay. Welcome to Regenesis RX. That's my little company that I started. May 26th, so in a couple weeks, we are going to have a class on ADHD. That is going to be both for adults who have ADHD and also for parents caring for children with ADHD. I want to kind of hit both sides of that. I think that the topic needs to be discussed a lot more. A lot of people just want more information and education and, want to know what treatments and whatnot are available to help cope and manage ADHD. And next month, we are going to be talking about thyroid. So usually I offer 2 classes every month. I think next month I'm only going to have one, just the thyroid class. It's a really big topic. But then also, I started a new job. It's really exciting, but I'm moving into a clinical role. So I'm basically, it's a lot more cerebral. I think it's going to be more time consuming. So I'm going to have to put a lot into this job at first. Hopefully we'll be able to resume the 2 classes a month shortly thereafter, but I just don't want to put too much on my plate. I start my new job on Monday. So that's that. Obviously, there's going to be a free ebook on the website later, just like always. I will show you at the end how to access that if you're not sure. If you're an app subscriber, you guys know everything is in one convenient little place. You know exactly where to go. So stay tuned for that. Okay, allow me to introduce myself. You guys probably know me from social media. I'm pharmacist Jamie. I've been a pharmacist for over a decade. My biggest passion is helping people to live their healthiest life. So that's pretty much that. I never know what to say for this part. All right, so what are we going to cover today? Oh, do we have someone else coming in? No, I think we're good. Okay. We are going to cover some basic facts and then also some theories about Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's is a little bit unusual. It's not like, for example, diabetes, which we basically know forwards and backwards. There are still a lot of theories. We're still not completely sure exactly how all of this works. We have some ideas, but it's not completely mapped out. So that's why I say some theories as well as some facts. We're going to talk about knowing your risk of developing Alzheimer's, including some testing that can kind of give you a clue before cognitive decline starts in any noticeable way. You are going to see that that's a theme that oftentimes this is working in the background for 10 or 20 years before you notice anything whatsoever. Okay, so it's kind of nice. It gives us a window of time to kind of get things headed in the right direction rather than where you get to the point where there's not really much hope, right? We're going to discuss lifestyle modifications that can help prevent Alzheimer's disease, also supplements that can help prevent Alzheimer's, and also Alzheimer's medications. Now, this class is a little bit unusual from most of the ones that I teach in that the supplements and medications section is going to be teeny, teeny, tiny because there's honestly not much, especially not much proven with research. The lifestyle modifications are king when it comes to preventing cognitive decline, dementia, and Alzheimer's. That section is going to be massive. So as a pharmacist, you guys know I usually focus on drugs, but the options are just not really that available with this particular topic. So we're going to focus where we know the research points us. All right. Okay, so quick disclaimer. This is my standard disclaimer. I am not your healthcare provider. I don't know your personal healthcare history. Don't take anything here as a prescription. Any one of these things might interfere with your medication list, with your previous history, with anything else that you've got going on. So, make sure that you talk to your own provider. All right, this is not a prescription, as I said. Also, please note with this class in particular, that some people who do absolutely everything right will still end up with Alzheimer's. Okay, I am not blaming anyone for developing a disease, period. Okay, sometimes the deck is stacked against us, and no matter what we do, it's going to happen. Okay. But many people have the impression that Alzheimer's is completely determined by genes and that they are absolutely helpless to do anything whatsoever about it. This is false. That is absolutely false. And we will go into the details about the genes and what it means if you have, the Alzheimer's gene and all of that. Okay, so stay tuned. but the choices that we make in life do have a huge impact for the vast majority of people, okay? So please don't be offended by this class or think that I am blaming people for getting sick. That is simply not the case. I know anytime I talk about Alzheimer's, I generally have people jumping in like, well, my grandmother was super healthy. She ate a perfect diet and exercised every single day and was super social, and she still got Alzheimer's. So this is crap. There are exceptions to everything, you guys, okay? And like I said, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I'm certainly not trying to blame anyone for getting this disease, but I also want to offer hope. There are absolutely things that you can do to offset your risk. And we'll even talk about the statistics, because we even have like percentages that your risk is decreased by taking certain actions, okay? These are well-studied topics that we have tons of research on. So we will get into all of that. Okay, so let's jump right in to facts about Alzheimer's. What is it? It is a progressive disease that impairs memory, thinking, mood, and problem solving. It is just one type of dementia. There are various other types as well, but it does account for between 60 to 80% of cases. So it is the biggest category of dementia. It is usually noticeable by mid-60s to mid-70s if someone is going to get it. It is associated with amyloid plaques. Now, amyloid occurs naturally in the brain, but in a patient with Alzheimer's, this amyloid starts clumping together and forming plaques. This is one of the first things that was very visible in an Alzheimer's patient's brain. This is kind of like our go-to definition of Alzheimer's. And we used to think that this was the driving cause of Alzheimer's, and that all we have to do is prevent amyloid plaques from forming or get them out once they are already there. All right, so we have spent billions upon billions upon billions of dollars developing medications that are designed to remove amyloid plaques. However, these amyloid removing medications have mostly been a massive failure. Now, they do remove the amyloid plaques, no problem, so they do what they were designed to do. But once the plaques are gone, symptoms generally don't get better, and cognitive decline is not slowed down. So there is one small exception to this. We'll discuss that at the end, but 99% of these amyloid removing medications have been abysmal failures. So you might have even heard, if you have a loved one who has Alzheimer's, or if you've had this touch your life in any way, you may have heard about a recent medication called aducanumab. This was rushed through FDA approval in 2021 because we don't really have medications to treat Alzheimer's. As you'll see, we have things that can kind of delay certain symptoms, but nothing actually helps Alzheimer's. So we rushed this through because we were hoping that this could be the answer. But it was pulled from the market in 2024 very recently because it was proven that it doesn't actually do anything to improve memory and cognition, and it does cause brain swelling and brain bleeds. So it removes the amyloid plaques, but it doesn't help Alzheimer's. All right, and that tends to be the case with so many of these amyloid plaque removing medications. That's why we really have no treatments for Alzheimer's. As I said, we've got medications that can slow down the progression of certain symptoms, but nothing that actually addresses the root problem. So the failure of these amyloid plaque removing medications to actually do anything has led to a hypothesis by some experts, including Dr. Dale Bredesen. I really do like him. I think he is a leading expert in the field, among many others, but I have actually a few of his books. I really like some of his stuff. But he, with others, have come up with this theory that these amyloid plaques are actually a protective response to other issues that the brain is fighting, and that therefore the key is not to reduce the amyloid plaques themselves or to try to remove those. It is to reverse or minimize why these amyloid plaques develop in the first place. Okay, so for those of you who were here for the heart episode, the heart health class, it's very similar to cholesterol, right? The cholesterol plaquing in your arteries, that is your body's way of trying to tamp down on rampant inflammation due to chronically high blood sugars. So the problem is the constantly high blood sugars. Cholesterol is just the Band-Aid that your body is sticking on that. Now, the cholesterol itself can absolutely become a problem. It can cause major blockages, heart attack, stroke, all of that, right? But the key is to try and prevent the need for the Band-Aid in the first place, rather than getting mad at the Band-Aid, if that makes sense. So we want to figure out why these amyloid plaques form in the first place and prevent them from happening as much as possible. So an example that I just kind of thought of while I was designing this class that I thought was pretty cute, it would be like if you have a fire in your home and firefighters rush to the scene and they completely destroy your lawn with their water splashing everywhere, the big heavy fire truck, they have absolutely ruined your lawn, right? And you're like, this is terrible. How do I fix this? I need to get rid of those firefighters. That's going to solve everything. But that's not going to solve everything because your house is on fire, right? So you need to make sure your house never catches on fire. Then you won't have to worry about your yard getting torn up, right? Don't get mad at the firefighters. Prevent the house from catching on fire. So I hope that that kind of gives it a little perspective and makes sense. Okay, so Alzheimer's is also associated with tau tangles in the brain. These are actually in the little diagram here. They're labeled as neurofibrillary tangles in this illustration. They're basically abnormal accumulations of a protein called tau that collects inside neurons. In healthy neurons, tau binds to and stabilizes little microtubules inside the neuron. But in a patient with Alzheimer's, chemical changes within the brain cause the tau protein to detach from those microtubules where it should be attached and stick to other tau molecules, forming these tangles. These tangles harm the synaptic connections between neurons, so the brain cells have a much harder time communicating with one another, and that basically makes your brain less functional. If the neurons can't talk, your brain is not working. Alzheimer's is also closely associated with atrophy of the brain. Pictured here, you can see massive difference in size between a healthy brain and an Alzheimer's patient brain. The phrase use it or lose it comes to mind as the brain is less able to function and is junked up with all these plaques and tangles. It just kind of shrinks. It's not very functional. It's working less. It's not doing its job appropriately. So just like your muscles shrink when they are no longer used, your brain can do the same thing. All right, so let's get into possible causes of amyloid plaques. Now, this says possible because we have not proven beyond all shadow of a doubt that these are for sure the causes of amyloid plaques. We do know that these are strongly associated with amyloid plaquing and Alzheimer's disease, but association is not always causation. Okay, so I want to be 100% crystal clear here. As I said earlier, a lot of this is somewhat theoretical. Okay, we don't have it completely nailed down like we do certain other diseases. But we do know that decreasing these factors is absolutely associated with a decreased risk of both amyloid plaques and Alzheimer's disease. All right, so even if we aren't 100% sure it's causation, we know association is enough to get us a pretty far way, right? All right, so inflammation, and that is in all caps because all the other things that I mentioned here will basically be other ways of saying inflammation in the brain. This is really the key. It appears that amyloid might be used by your body to alleviate inflammation in your brain and to stop the inflammatory process. All right, so if we want to eliminate the amyloid plaques from forming in the first place, stop the brain inflammation. Genes are a huge factor. ApoE4 is the real star. Anyone who has had Alzheimer's disease touch their family, you probably already know all about this gene. If you have no ApoE4 genes, so you did not get a copy of this from either parent, lucky you, you win the lottery, you have a 50-50 chance of having Alzheimer's by age 85 if you live in the US or in other developed nations. Those are pretty good odds. All right, by 85, life expectancy is around age 82. So you're living past the average life expectancy and you still are like a coin flip, could go either way. Okay. Now, if you have one copy of the gene, so you inherited it from one parent, but not the other, you have a 50-50 chance, you have that coin flip risk of having Alzheimer's by age 75. So you have just increased your risk by about 10 years. You've lost about 10 years of healthy cognition, if that makes sense. If you are unlucky enough to have inherited this gene from both parents, so you have two copies of the ApoE4 gene, you have a 50-50 risk of getting Alzheimer's disease by age 65. Now, a lot of people are still working at 65. A lot of people are just entering their golden years. This is the time in life where they get to sit back and enjoy the fruits of their labor. You don't want to have Alzheimer's, So that's basically the role that genes have. They play a significant role here, But please remember that many, 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 many people who have 2 copies of this gene still go on to live long, full lives with 0 signs of dementia. This is not a death sentence. This is not a crystal ball. Okay, this is not predicting your future or a guarantee of cognitive issues. It just means that you have a disadvantage. It basically means this is like you're starting a race with an extra 20 pounds on your back. You're carrying a backpack with 20 pounds and you're running against people who have no weight on their backs. So you're going to have to work harder to prevent issues. All right, I hope that makes sense. The ApoE4 gene is associated with a heightened inflammatory response. As I said, all of these are going to circle back to inflammation. It basically quashes several other genes that limit inflammation, and it turbocharges nuclear factor kappa B, which promotes inflammation in the brain. So having this gene just basically equals more inflammation in your brain, period. You're going to have to work harder to prevent that inflammation. All right, the next one is sad for so many of us, but basically being a woman. 2/3 of people with Alzheimer's disease are women. Now, we do know that women tend to live a little bit longer than men, not much longer, but this data goes far beyond that. For example, 1 in 6 women over the age of 65 develop Alzheimer's disease, but only 1 in 11 men over age 65. That is a dramatic difference. We're not 100% sure why. There are lots of different theories concerning this. One that I think makes a lot of sense is that the protective hormones of being a woman, like estrogen, those disappear during menopause completely. Like our brains are kind of wired to run really well on estrogen and progesterone. Once that's gone, you know, it's not a healthy state of being for most of us. We're going to have to work harder to overcome that. Women are also more likely to have vascular issues, which can contribute to cognitive decline. But as I said, we're not 100% sure. More research needs to be done. I do think that it is important to note that hormone replacement therapy for women is associated with a decreased risk of Alzheimer's and of all types of dementia. Estrogen in particular, all right? When it comes to a lot of hormone replacement therapy, you'll tend to find that progesterone makes you feel better. It's kind of the feel-good thing. It helps you to sleep better. It's wonderful. I love progesterone. And estrogen is more of like the protective hormone. It does the heavy lifting of, you know, protecting your heart, protecting your brain. It just doesn't make you feel so good like progesterone. It's nice to have a balance of both. All right, so glucose dysregulation. That is another factor here. This should come as no surprise to anyone. Alzheimer's is often referred to as diabetes type 3. There's a lot of truth to that. You already know from my other classes and videos, if you watch those, that sugar is extremely inflammatory and that we eat thousands of grams more than we should of sugar. We just eat way more than our body could ever possibly handle within our modern diet. We're designed to like sweet foods because in nature, the only sweet foods are fruit, which are absolutely fabulous for you. Unfortunately, we are now able to make foods that are like absolutely stacked full of all kinds of processed sugars. Not good for the body, nothing even remotely like fruit, right? In fact, even those people who think they are eating relatively well are probably eating too much sugar. This is when tracking food can be really helpful. You guys know I never recommend tracking calories. I think that it makes people crazy and it's just not a good use of your time. And if you're focused on calories, you tend to ignore the really important things. But tracking your macros can be incredibly, incredibly important to give you an idea of exactly what's going on. So that's your protein, your fiber, and your added sugars. Those are the 3 ones I really like to personally keep track of. You want to keep your added sugars less than 25 grams per day. All right, we'll talk more about this later. Chronically elevated blood sugars and insulin levels are awful for your brain as well as for the rest of your body. That's another one of my favorite blood tests to pull is insulin, because your insulin is going to show up as high decades before your blood sugar does, right? It just basically gives you a window into the future. If your insulin is good, you are good. Okay, lipid dysregulation. That's another thing. This goes hand in hand with glucose dysregulation. Once again, refer back to the heart health class. That's one of my free classes for everyone. So even if you're not an app subscriber, it's on my website. I don't have time to go over all of this again. It was kind of like a whole hour there, but lipids and glucose hand in hand. Suboptimal nutrient levels. Yes, it is true that our diets are not great in general for many of us. It is also true that our food is not quite as packed with nutrients as it once was. We're eating a very different diet than we did 100 years ago. But in my opinion, I may be biased as a pharmacist, but I just think this is so huge. Rampant overuse of medications that decrease stomach acid are such a huge factor with suboptimal nutrient levels. People are taking PPIs daily or even twice daily for decades. They have never been warned that these medications are associated with osteoporosis, anemia, kidney disease, dementia, cognitive decline, C. diff, infections, SIBO, that small intestinal bowel overgrowth, because your stomach acid should kill off your pathogens. If you're taking a PPI and your stomach acid is not sufficient, those pathogens just go all the way through your body and can infect you everywhere. They literally get no warning whatsoever that these are all things that come along with PPIs. Now, some people have to take PPIs. If you've got Barrett's esophagus, it is what it is. You just need to try and supplement and figure out a way to get proper nutrients. But so many people who have heartburn actually have chronically low levels of stomach acid. They need the opposite of a PPI. And instead, they're just making the problem worse and worse. Or they have something like H. pylori. Refer back to the heartburn class, you guys. Another thing that can happen with suboptimal nutrient levels is people who are poor methylators. So this is kind of a little bit of a complicated topic to jump into here, but let me just briefly go over the fact that people who are poor methylators have issues trying to convert B12 and folic acid to the active form. So even though they're eating foods that are really high in these nutrients, they're not getting any of these nutrients. They're basically like chronically starved of B12 and folic acid in particular. You've probably heard of MTHFR. This is the enzyme that is responsible for activating folate and reducing homocysteine in our bodies. If you have a certain variation of this gene, your body just does not do this well. So homocysteine can accumulate within your body. This is not good. We'll talk more about this in a minute. But not being able to absorb nutrients from your food is one of the worst things that can happen to your body. It leads to all kinds of problems, all those ones that I just mentioned a minute ago. All right. Also, exposure to harmful chemicals. So this is a little bit more niche. Most of us don't really have to worry about this as much, but I've worked with several people who have had really crazy exposures due to their job, or one person had a massive mold infestation. But this can basically be toxins. So those who have worked in certain hazardous environments are more likely to develop Alzheimer's. You can get tested to see if you've got things like heavy metals and whatnot in your system, and then try to get on a plan to eliminate those. Especially people who have been exposed long-term to mercury and mold. I would say those are the biggest ones. And there are also certain medications that can mess with your brain chemistry, like opioids and benzodiazepines and first-generation antihistamines. That would be your Benadryl or your Tylenol PN, diphenhydramine, has several different names. All of those can put you at an increased risk for these amyloid plaques and therefore Alzheimer's. Okay, know your risk. We know some factors associated with amyloid plaques and Alzheimer's disease, but how do we know if we are like already on that path, that we're already kind of tipping the scales towards having cognitive decline? Here's the thing. As I said earlier, Alzheimer's does not happen near as quickly as people tend to think. People will usually be in a slow cognitive decline for about 10 to 20 years before even they notice anything, let alone friends, family, coworkers, loved ones. People are very resilient. We find ways around our weaknesses without even realizing it. We just find really great ways to compensate. And honestly, the smarter you are, the more independent, capable of a person you are, the more likely you are to do this. So Alzheimer's can feel like it progresses really quickly, but actually it's been going on in the background for a long time. And this person has just been compensating so well that no one knew, including themselves. So it's really not a fast-moving disease generally. It's just that we resilient people find a way around it. So there is certainly a window of opportunity to realize the inflammation and bad things going on inside the brain and that it's not working as well as it used to before the disease progresses beyond hope. Here are some markers that you can look for. And many of these are covered by your insurance, you guys. I definitely offer labs as well. So I always like to mention that for people who, for whatever reason, can't get their doctor to order these, or if they're not covered by insurance and my lab service, which is Rupa, happens to be cheaper, great. But anytime you can, try to get tests through your doctor because they can use your insurance. Always try to save money. And I appreciate you guys because I've had lots of people message me like, oh, I want to get labs through you because I want to support you. That is so kind. And I love you so much for that. But I don't make any money whatsoever off labs. If you do get labs from me, it has like this physician fee. That's actually a physician there at Rupa who goes over like all of the lab orders that I put in and make sure that they're medically appropriate. That's not me. I make nothing. I don't charge you guys anything for labs. I think it's important for people to be able to access the information that they want about their healthcare, period. So I will never charge for labs. And also, these levels are in your ebook. So don't sit there and think that you have to hurry up and write all of these down. All of this information is going to be in the ebook, you guys. But I did just want to mention these briefly in person before you go through and get the ebook. And remember, guys, testing is never required, especially if it's not covered by your insurance. You can honestly just assume that you're at risk and live a life designed to prevent Alzheimer's. What's the worst that can happen? You eat healthy and exercise. Bummer, right? So I think it would be wise if everyone just lived a life assuming that they've got 2 ApoE4 genes and that they're doomed and they better live super healthy. Great, right? But for people like me who love to see things in black and white and love to go through all of the nerdy details, that's why I've included these, because I will admit I have gotten all of these done, right? I'm just that kind of a person. So this is for people like me. All right, so the first test is the ApoE4. This is obviously one of the biggest predictors of your overall risk. Please remember, this is not a guarantee that you will or you won't get Alzheimer's. Plenty of people with no copies of this gene end up with Alzheimer's. Plenty of people with 2 copies don't get Alzheimer's. All right, this is just a strong indication of your relative risk. Homocysteine. I said that we would get back to this, so let's jump into it here. Homocysteine is an amino acid. It's present in lots of meat and dairy products. As a side note, many specialists think that a diet that is low or absent in animal products can help prevent dementia, basically for this reason, because of homocysteine. But if you love your meat and your dairy, you can still keep your homocysteine levels ideal. The conversion of homocysteine requires B12, B6, folate, and betaine. If you do not have adequate levels of these nutrients, your homocysteine will start to accumulate and rise in your body and put you at a greater risk. It is a very inflammatory thing. We want to keep this level ideally at 7 or below. All right. B6, B12, and folate. These are also levels that you can look into. Checking these levels is helpful to give you an idea of whether or not you are deficient and at risk of accumulating too much homocysteine. For B12, we would like to see it at more than 500 picograms per milliliter. For folate, I like to see it between 10 and 25, and for B6, between 60 and 100. Insulin resistance measurements, these are some of my favorite measurements because they are just, I think, the best indicator of your overall health. Okay, so that's going to be things like your fasting insulin. Ideally, we want it less than 4.5. Now, if you're seeing a traditional doctor, these levels are going to be like a lot different than what they'll tell you. That's because I always aim for ideal when possible. So if your insulin is less than 4.5, wonderful. Your fasting glucose, ideally, we want it less than 90. Your A1C, ideally, we want it less than 5.6. If you meet all of those requirements, wonderful, you're doing a great thing. Your HSCRP, this is C-reactive protein. It is produced in the liver in response to any and every type of inflammation in the body. The thing I hate about this measurement is it's not specific. It basically just says inflammation, right? But it doesn't tell us where. That's what I don't like about it. So if this is elevated, it could be in your brain or it could not be. If it's not in your brain, it's not going to put you at increased risk for Alzheimer's. It could be in your gut. It could be anywhere, honestly. Even if you've been sick recently, your HSCRP is going to be off the charts. So I always like to pull this level just so that we know, okay, is there inflammation going on or not? Now, if there is inflammation, doesn't necessarily mean that you're at increased risk for Alzheimer's, but it just gives us an idea that somewhere in your body, something is inflammatory. Vitamin D, we like to check this because vitamin D deficiency is absolutely associated with cognitive decline. I like to see this level ideally between 60 and 80. Once again, your doctor is going to have something totally different. I think most doctors are like, anything above 25 is great. I'm like, oh my God, 25, that is really low, but to each their own, okay? A full thyroid panel can also be helpful. Once again, being in a hypothyroid state is associated with cognitive decline. And a full panel is not just your TSH, guys. It's going to have your TSH, yes, which I like to see between 1 and 1.8. That is a really tight level, but in my opinion, that is where people are ideal. I like to see free T3 between 3.6 and 4.2. Once again, that's a lot tighter than your doctor is going to suggest, but as I said, I like things to be in the ideal range. Your reverse T3, we want it between 8 and 15. Your free T4, I like to see that between 0.9 and 1.2. And I also like to check thyroid antibodies because that's going to let us know if you've got autoimmune thyroid or if it is due to something else. A whole class on thyroid is coming next month. So we're going to talk about this in so much more detail. It's so hard for me not to jump into hypothyroid. It's one of my absolute favorite topics. It's so complicated and so misunderstood, but we've got to move on. Heavy metals, once again, if there is a concern that there has been exposure, usually this is due to a hazardous workplace environment. And then gluten sensitivity tests may also be helpful. Okay, you can find that through GI map testing or through allergy testing, lots of blood tests for celiac that your doctor can offer, it almost always covered by insurance. But gluten sensitivity, it just causes massive inflammation if your body, if you're eating gluten and you have a sensitivity. So we want to try and tamp down on inflammation whenever we can. Okay, so let's talk about lifestyle choices that can help to prevent Alzheimer's. Number 1 is the MIND diet, a combination of the Mediterranean and the DASH diet. The DASH diet is honestly very similar to the Mediterranean. It just really emphasizes limiting salt to help keep your blood pressure in check. That diet is really focused on helping your blood pressure. And the MIND diet, it's all the stuff you guys already know. Eat your fruits and veggies, okay? It lists specific quantities here and then also in your ebook. So I'm not going to sit here and read all of these quantities. You guys can see them right there in front of you. But I will just mention a few things briefly. The MIND diet is really focused on whole-based food and avoiding processed foods when possible. Limit your added sugars to less than 25 grams per day. On your nutrition label, you'll see like carbs, sugars. Added sugars is what we're worried about. You can eat fruit all day long. You can eat vegetables. Sometimes people are like, oh, carrots are high in sugar. I'm like, no, they're not. Like, okay, technically for a vegetable, I guess, but eat all the carrots you want. You do not have to worry about the sugar in carrots, I assure you. It is the added processed sugars that are the problem. All right. Try to go easy on the salt, okay? That we don't want to have our blood pressure sky high. That is not good for your brain. Olive oil and omega-3 rich foods like avocado, flax, and chia seeds are so important for the MIND diet. Omega-3 is a potent anti-inflammatory agent. It tamps down inflammation absolutely everywhere, including your brain. In my opinion, most people should be on it. Not everyone. Please check in with your doctor because some people who are taking certain blood thinners or who have certain clotting disorders or whatnot, not a good choice for them. People who are allergic to shellfish, probably not a good choice for them either. But for many people, omega-3 is great, okay? Omega-3 is good for everything, not just your brain. It's also good for your heart, your skin, all the things. Okay, limiting red meat and cheese and butter as much as possible. For me, limiting red meat and butter, no problem. You will pry the cheese from my cold, dead hands. It's not going to happen. So, try to do the best you can, guys. Embrace the 80-20 rule and be healthy most of the time. And then go ahead and keep your indulgences as well that help keep you sane and happy, okay? And if you follow this diet, you have a 53% lower risk of Alzheimer's compared to people eating a standard American diet. you have cut your risk in half. That's mind-blowing. That's mind-blowing in my opinion. I don't know. When you look at the actual statistics, it's amazing what you can just do with lifestyle modifications. Now, I do just want to touch briefly on the fact that there is a little bit of controversy when it comes to diet, because some evidence suggests that a plant-based diet and avoiding animal products altogether is the best way to go. Other evidence suggests that that animal products are fine, but that you need to avoid, or meat is fine basically, but you need to avoid gluten and dairy altogether, because we know that gluten and dairy are both very inflammatory for most people. I personally think that we can chalk a lot of these differing opinions and variation up to the variations between individuals. For example, gluten is generally inflammatory for most people. So yes, it would probably be good if most of us really cut back on the gluten or eliminated it altogether if you have an allergy or celiac, for example. But I have seen it in black and white on GI tests and other blood tests, someone who has no reaction whatsoever to gluten. They could eat gluten all day long. It's not going to inflame them. Okay. So it's hard for me to believe. Every time I see it, I'm always a little shocked. I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't have a problem with gluten. That is truly shocking to me, right? But it happens. There are people like that. All great. More power to them. They can eat gluten. It's no problem. That it's not inflammatory to their system. Other people are poor methylators. So they cannot break down animal products as efficiently as people who are good methylators. These people, you can kind of know about them without even testing them. I generally pick them out fairly easily from, one-on-one consultations with them, because they naturally avoid animal products. They just don't like them. They make them feel crummy because they accumulate that homocysteine, and they just don't like that. Your body does a pretty good job of telling you what it wants and what it needs if you know how to listen to it. And they just feel inflamed when they eat that. So they will do better with zero or minimal animal products in their life, or by compensating by taking the appropriate supplementation, which is the methylated B vitamins, so that they can get rid of the homocysteine appropriately. But in general, for literally everyone, we know that variations of the Mediterranean diet, slightly adapted to our specific needs, is the way to go. And you can take the Mediterranean diet and adjust it any kind of way. You can make it a vegan Mediterranean diet, a high protein Mediterranean diet, a gluten-free Mediterranean diet, whatever. But that is what the MIND diet is based on. It is Mediterranean with some adjustments. Okay, so exercise is another thing that we can do to prevent amyloid plaque formation. Aerobic exercise. Get your blood flowing. Oh, hold on. We got more people coming in. Here we go. Get your blood flowing. This will keep bringing the necessary nutrients everywhere that they are needed, and it facilitates the removal of junk building up in your brain. A 2010 meta-analysis of 15 studies showed a reduction in the risk of cognitive impairment by 38% with exercise versus being sedentary. The Framingham longitudinal study, literally one of the most informative long-term studies of all time. We've talked about it all the time because I just find it so incredibly valuable. This is one of my favorite studies, but it confirmed that just going on daily walks, so we are not talking about intense exercise, but daily walks, lowered the risk of developing dementia over one's lifetime by 40%. So one study shows, or a meta-analysis, which is a combination of lots of studies, shows 38%. Framingham shows 40%. So we're in the 38 to 40% range when it comes to exercise. 53% with diet, 40-ish% with exercise. You are greatly decreasing your risk of dementia with just these two pieces right here. Daily walks, you guys. So simple, easy, free, so good for you. No fancy equipment required, no gym membership required. Just go outside and get your legs moving. It is one of the best things that you can do for your brain and your body and your mental health as well. Just being out in nature is proven in studies to improve your mental health. Resistance training. This is so interesting to me. I always preach the benefits of resistance training for our bone and muscle health, but until I sat down and dug through all of this research, I didn't even realize the benefits that resistance training has for cognitive health. So thank you so much for inspiring me and for requesting this class, because I learned a lot in this section in particular. Check this out, you guys. Researchers from the University of British Columbia found that twice weekly resistance training for 1 year resulted in a reduction of white matter lesions. They can literally take pictures of your brain and see, oh, your brain is repairing itself, something that we don't usually see. That's insane. It also improved the attention of a group of elderly women. So you could see it in the way that they interacted and also in actual physical scans of the brain. Resistance training also appears to significantly reduce the formation of cholesterol plaques, which increases the supply of essential nutrients to the brain. And homocysteine, that inflammatory product that we keep talking about, it gets built up in our system and is associated with Alzheimer's. It decreases after 6 months of resistance training. You can decrease your homocysteine with exercise as well as diet and supplementation. So super, super interesting stuff. Now, doing something a little complex that you love, so a sport or trying to learn a new skill or a physical hobby like gardening, anything that you really enjoy and look forward to that keeps your body moving is ideal. If you can combine the body and mind together in something like a sport, that is a home run. That is like the gold standard of what we want to do. Stress management. Chronic stress has been proven to decrease, sorry guys, I forgot my water. Oh no, it is proven to decrease brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is the main protein responsible for the production of new brain cells. If your brain is not able to create new cells or repair itself because it's low on this, not good if we're trying to avoid Alzheimer's. Stress inhibits the production of serotonin and other important neurotransmitters, which puts you at an increased risk of anxiety and depression, both of which are significant risk factors for Alzheimer's. The three all kind of go hand in hand. Chronic stress leads to an impaired immune function and also increased inflammation. Inflammation rears its ugly head again. So what can you do about chronic stress? Well, meditation is shown in several studies to increase brain volume, or at least to slow brain volume loss. So we're not sure if it can actually increase the brain volume, but we know that it can prevent you from losing mass of your brain. Like that picture we saw earlier, you want to be on the left-hand side, not the right. Meditation helps. MRIs show that people who practice meditation throughout their lives have improved cortical thickness and hippocampal volume in their brains compared to the control group who does not meditate. Super interesting stuff. This difference is more pronounced in older individuals. So most people's brains kind of naturally start to atrophy. As we age, gunk is going to build up no matter how much we try to prevent that. It's just kind of the natural part of aging. We just don't want it to tip over into actual dementia or cognitive decline. But if you are meditating, you are not experiencing near as much of that brain atrophy. I just find that so fascinating. There are also alternatives to meditation like walking, yoga, music, even organizing your home. Having a decluttered, pleasant living space is proven by research to decrease chronic stress. And social relationships. This is all capitals for good reason. Being plugged into a social network is proven in study, meta-analysis, all different kinds of research to be associated with a decreased risk of Alzheimer's. Spending time with your loved ones is some of the best medicine out there, period. Way better than anything that we have on the market. Friends and family and social clubs can go such a long way in preventing this disease. For those of you who are app subscribers, you can also watch the stress and anxiety class. That one is not available to everyone, but it is in the app, and that just gives you a lot more information on how to manage this. Restore your mind with sleep. So everybody knows that not getting enough sleep will lead to brain fog and poor memory or decision making the next day. You know, if you pull an all-nighter or if you only get 2 hours of sleep the next day, you're going to be dragging your butt. You're not going to be your sharpest or at the top of your game. We all get that. But a lot of people don't realize that long-term sleep deficits, even fairly minor ones, equal long-term problems as well. Several studies have indicated that chronically sleep-deprived individuals have more amyloid plaques in their brain. So how much is enough? That's always a huge question I get asked. Well, at least 7 hours is pretty clear for the vast majority of us. Individual needs vary. And I really want to note that women tend to need more sleep physically than men do on average. Most men are okay with 7 hours. Some men are even okay with 6 hours. Some men need 8 hours. Okay. It's on a continuum. It's not all like, oh, 7 hours is the magic number. No. But for most men, 7 to 8 hours is the golden zone. If they can do that, they are at 100%. For most women, it's more 8 to 9 hours. Okay. So, gentlemen, if your wife needs to sleep in a little bit longer than you, it's actual, it's real, it's physical, it's measurable. Okay. It's not just her being lazy or wanting you to do something extra. It is literally a physical thing. And I think that it's such a disgrace that our medical system tends to be pretty misogynistic. And we base most of our like daily needs, like even the 2000 calorie daily need, that is for men. Most women do not need 2000 calories daily. We need more like 1500, right? But what do you always hear? This is based on a 2000 calorie diet. And you need 8 hours of sleep because men are fine on 8 hours of sleep. A lot of women need 9. It drives me crazy. I just wish that we could frame that differently. Men and women are physically different. It's a reality. And I think that we should address it and educate people about that. If you're a woman and you're trying to get by on 8 hours of sleep and it's not cutting it, don't beat yourself up. You're physically different, okay? Now, melatonin production naturally declines as we age. That's just normal for everyone. So adding that back in, if you are struggling with sleep, makes a ton of sense to me. And FYI, I just want to say a few things about melatonin. Number one, these smaller doses appear to be just as effective as the larger ones in clinical trials. So a 3 to 5 milligram dose is sufficient. I see a lot of people taking like 20 milligrams of melatonin a night, and I'm like, that's really not necessary and not really tested. So I don't think you should do that. Probably stick with the 3 to 5 milligrams. And then also vivid dreams. So many people who start taking melatonin quit because they experience really vivid dreams. This is actually a wonderful sign. So if you're taking some of these standard sleep medications like Benadryl, for example, or Ambien, something like that, it's going to cause you to pass out. It's going to help your body to get restful sleep. Anytime that you're laying down, your body is resting and repairing itself and doing all those great things, but it's not going to allow your brain to hit the deep stage sleep, stage 3 and 4. That includes your REM sleep, which is where you dream. So it's going to keep you in these artificial stages of sleep, like up here, these superficial stages. Your brain is not getting the restorative sleep that it needs when you take these. Okay. So a lot of people will try to switch from taking something like Ambien to something like melatonin. And they're like, oh, I didn't get along with that because I was having crazy dreams. Well, it's because your brain is starved for these deep stages of sleep where you dream. It is massively deprived of stage 3 and 4 sleep. Then you switch to melatonin. The cool thing about melatonin is it puts you in those deep stages of sleep. It like encourages it. So you're going from something that doesn't allow it to something that encourages it. Your dreams are going to be crazy because your brain has been craving that deep sleep and now it's getting it. Oh, honey, you're going to dream. Okay. Now, I will say that it tends to decrease over time as your brain gets the adequate sleep and it's not so deep stage sleep deprived. Your vivid dreaming cuts back a little bit, but it does take time. A lot of times it'll take a month or more. So just be aware of that. And some people still don't tolerate the melatonin because they're like, I don't know, the dreams freak me out too much. I can't do it. Okay, I get that. But if you are having those vivid dreams while taking melatonin, try to take it as a great sign that your brain is finally getting the rest that it needs. Snoring. That's something else I want to talk about because snoring is not normal. I know that we all think it's like a funny joke, haha, and like snoring from time to time if you're sick or something, sure. But snoring all the time, every night should be discussed with your doctor. It could indicate a physical problem or something even serious like sleep apnea. It's better to have it looked into, better to do a workup. Maybe you just have a deviated septum and it's not a big deal, but maybe you have sleep apnea, which can be deadly. All right, so just get the workup, do it, okay? Another thing, avoid most sleep medications for all the reasons that I just said. It does not allow your brain to enter these deep restorative sleep stages. So if your body is getting rest and your brain isn't, is it really rest? No, in my opinion. You can see the list of all of the different medications there. It's, what everyone thinks of when they think of sleep medications. I'm not going to sit here and read them all out to you. And there are some alternatives for medications that do not carry the same risks of keeping you in these superficial stages of sleep, and then also increasing your risk of Alzheimer's and dementia, which all of these other sleep medications do. That is going to be melatonin, valerian root, 5-HTP, and chamomile. Now, please discuss any of these with your doctor before starting them, because they can interact with certain prescription medications. So always check in with your doctor about your supplements. I know sometimes your doctors are very dismissive about your supplements. I get it, but at least just check in with them. Give them the opportunity, okay? Exercise your brain. Tons of studies find an inverse relationship between formal education and the incidence of Alzheimer's, suggesting that complex cognition protects the brain against aging and cognitive decline. In fact, this is actually one of the theories about why women are so much more likely to get Alzheimer's, is because historically, women were much less educated and they were kind of locked out of like cerebral jobs for the most part, right? Most women were working, more service related jobs, if at all. A lot of women were stay-at-home moms, and a lot of men had mentally demanding jobs. I think that it's going to be very interesting to see if the data starts to flip, because now in recent generations, women tend to be more educated, and most of us do have cerebral jobs where we have to use our brains a lot more. So stay tuned. We'll see how, the millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, how all of those people age, and if this data starts to see a reversal in trends now that women are much more highly educated and using their brains a lot more than previous generations. Now, simple games and puzzles are great. People always say, oh, I do my crossword and my Sudoku to prevent Alzheimer's. That is great. Go for it. Absolutely do that. But more complicated and challenging tasks appear to be even more effective at preventing Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. So some examples of more complicated, challenging tasks include things like navigation. Very interesting that taxi drivers consistently have a larger hippocampus region in their brain than non-taxi drivers. I actually saw a couple studies on this. I'm like, wow, who is doing this research? It's so interesting. Multiple languages, that's another thing. A 2014 study determined that knowing a second language delayed the onset of dementia by 4.5 years. So you just bought yourself another 4.5 years if you speak a second language, and the benefit gets even larger for more languages acquired. So go ahead, start now, learn that second and third language, and protect your cognitive health. Music is another thing. Now, in particular, playing a musical instrument is associated with a decreased risk of Alzheimer's, but enjoying music of any type does provide some type of benefit. Dance, that's another thing. People who take dance classes or who regularly participate in dance have a decreased risk. And it makes sense to me. I don't know if anyone else ever does this. Sometimes I'm scrolling through social media and I see these couples that are doing like what is it called? Where you just like do it there on the spot. Like it's not choreographed, like the swing dancing and the salsa and all this. And they're just like freestyling right there. It's incredible. You really have to use your brain to be able to do that on the fly with a partner. And neither one of you communicated ahead of time about what you're doing. So I can absolutely see how this makes sense. Continuing education, that is another thing. So this could include something like taking a computer programming class, taking an online class, listening to educational podcasts, even actually watching like documentaries on TV if you're like really paying attention and trying to learn things, anything like that can help decrease your risk of Alzheimer's. We also see that teaching others is associated with a decreased risk. So trying to explain what you know to other people and trying to get through to them, very, very associated with keeping your risk down yourself. So that's kind of nice. You're doing a nice thing for someone else and you're helping yourself, right? Getting master's and doctorate degrees, so advanced education, as I said earlier, continuing to learn throughout your life, complex and challenging professions. So those who regularly have to use their brains in complicated ways at work, those people are at a decreased risk for Alzheimer's. Creating art is associated with a decreased risk. And also chess. So that's another hobby that you can look into. Once again, social interaction comes into play here because making conversation and connecting with others is a complex mental task that helps to keep you sharp. All right, something a lot of people don't think about. I always harp on this because My goodness, you guys, more and more data coming out about this is crazy. Oh my goodness. Oral hygiene. A recent analysis led by the National Institute on Aging found that bacteria associated with periodontal disease is also associated with the development of Alzheimer's and also other types of dementia. So they made a very clear link there. I don't know if you guys saw my recent video about periodontal disease and it being associated with an increased risk of colon cancer. We're just seeing this pop up over and over. It's also putting you at an increased risk for heart infection, heart attack. I mean, floss, please floss. Floss first and then brush your teeth for 2 minutes after. Those are key. Those are essential. Now, if you want bonus points, you can also do oil pulling. You can use a water pick. That is like extra credit for those type A personalities who really want to make sure they nailed it, go for it. But the brushing and the flossing, that's a non-starter. You got to use that. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You got to floss. I know not everyone does it, but you should. See your dentist every 6 months as well. This is so huge because the symptoms of periodontal disease equal nothing. Okay, it's not like when you have a chipped tooth or a cavity in your tooth, you will experience pain. You're going to know something's wrong. I need to see the dentist. I myself am so guilty of this. I did not go to a dentist for 10 years because I am very obsessive about my oral health. I brush and floss all the time. I brush every single time I eat. I floss twice a day. And I knew I didn't have any cavities. My teeth are like, yeah, pretty nice teeth. So I didn't see a dentist for 10 years. And when I finally did go see the dentist, they really, talked some sense into me because they were like, most adults don't get cavities because most adults know how to take care of their teeth. We see kids with cavities all the time because they're bad at this. They're still learning. They're, I don't need to brush my teeth, whatever. And I eat lots of candy. Okay. But most adults don't get cavities. That is not the gold marker for, I don't need to see a dentist because I probably don't have cavities. The periodontal disease, the gum disease, oftentimes doesn't have any symptoms. Sometimes you'll get bleeding gums, whatever, but usually it's nothing. You have absolutely no idea that you have this bacteria that can travel down your gut and cause colon cancer, that can travel to your heart and give you a heart infection or heart attack, that can travel to your brain and put you at increased risk for Alzheimer's. There are usually no signs or symptoms. The only way you know is by going to your dentist. And yes, I did have periodontal disease at that time. I now do not. I go to my dentist actually every 4 months now just because I'm crazy and like to be on top of everything. But yeah, I had no signs or symptoms, you guys, and I've got great teeth. And still I had this and was putting myself at increased risk unknowingly because I didn't realize that this is a big, important part of the process. See your dentist. Okay, let's talk about supplements. There's not many, so this is going to be real quick. Sorry to disappoint you. Most of them are a total joke and waste of money. Here's looking at you, Prevagen. That is the worst of the worst. I will very briefly go over why I hate Prevagen so much. First of all, it is wildly expensive. Secondly, it doesn't make any sense. So basically, they found this protein in jellyfish that can suck up free calcium. Now, part of the picture of Alzheimer's is that you might have some free calcium roaming around that kind of gets added into these amyloid plaques and tau tangles and all that, okay? So they're like, oh, well, if we can get rid of this free calcium in the brain, great. Maybe we can help prevent cognitive decline in Alzheimer's. Here's the thing. Anyone who remembers Biology 101 knows that protein is a big molecule, and it is the very first thing that gets digested. It is not going to survive your digestive tract. Your body is going to immediately break down any and all protein that you ingest and then turn it into its own protein. It's going to take a hamburger that you eat and turn it into skin cells or muscle cells or whatever it needs. But it is not going to keep hamburger molecules, protein, intact and just travel throughout your body. It's going to use those building blocks to make its own things. So this massive protein, it's called apocoine, if I remember right. It is ginormous, okay? It's not going to pass into your digestive tract unharmed. It's going to be immediately destroyed. Then, let's say by some miracle that this protein goes through your digestive tract unharmed. Then it is supposed to cross your blood-brain barrier to get up into your brain to suck up the free calcium. You guys, your blood-brain barrier is like the most tight junction in your entire body. Your body does not want anything getting into your brain unless it is like very carefully vetted. A giant apocoine protein has less than 0 chance of crossing the blood-brain barrier. It absolutely won't work. And not only in theory, this obviously is a joke, right? Every scientist who's ever looked at this is like, huh, that's funny. But they even actually did clinical trials. Prevagen did its own trial, and then other people have as well. And the trials prove 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt, this doesn't work and does not work any better than a placebo, period. End of story. Don't waste your money on Prevagen. In my opinion, it is predatory, should be pulled off the market, and that's that. Okay, so omega-3, sorry guys, someone's at my house. Omega-3. Now this is the one supplement that may actually, hold on, let me let someone else in here. This is the one supplement that may actually show some benefit in research. One study found that the level of DHA, which is in omega-3 fatty acids, in red blood cells is related to the risk of Alzheimer's. Those with the highest levels of DHA had a 49% lower risk than those with the lowest levels of DHA. So that's pretty big. Now, you don't have to get omega-3 from supplements. I put it in the supplement section because a lot of people do choose to supplement, like myself. You can get it from avocados, flax seeds, chia seeds, olive oil, whatever. But if you don't have a bunch of that in your diet, then you may need to supplement. Now, as far as other things, there is nothing else that appears to directly help prevent Alzheimer's. Maybe methylated B vitamins. If you are a poor methylator and you are not able to convert those on your own, then that is something you can potentially look into, very patient specific. So it doesn't actually affect your risk of Alzheimer's, but it can affect your ability to absorb nutrients, right? And then maybe things that address insulin resistance or lipid levels or poor digestion. Once again, this is just related, it's very patient specific, and it's related to, are you getting nutrition from your food, and is your glucose chronically high, leading to inflammation in the brain? So that's that when it comes to supplements. Sorry, it's pretty much a non-starter, right? Maybe omega-3, nothing else really. Okay, so I also want to briefly talk about Alzheimer's medications. Even though these medications don't actually stop the disease, don't prevent cognitive decline, they can help with symptoms. So number one would be cholinesterase inhibitors. These prevent the breakdown of acetylcholine, which is an important chemical messenger that the brain uses that is decreased in Alzheimer's patients. These medications will slow down some of the symptoms of Alzheimer's, but as I said earlier, they don't do anything to address the underlying disease. And eventually, the loss of brain cells as the disease progresses means there isn't enough acetylcholine available to make this medication work. So this is more something that's going to be generally towards earlier stages of cognitive decline. Once you hit a certain point, this medication is just not going to be effective. Side effects include nausea, diarrhea, loss of bladder control, muscle twitching or cramping, and weight loss. It's advised to take these with food, or you can even get the patch. There's a form of this called Exelon in patch form that can help decrease the risk of side effects. I generally find that's pretty well tolerated for most people. Another option is Memantine or Namenda. This can help slow down some of the symptoms of Alzheimer's, and it works by limiting glutamate cell interactions. Glutamate is a chemical messenger used in brain functions, but too much glutamate causes irregular activity and damage in the nerve cells of the brain. Side effects of this type of medication include dizziness, headache, constipation, and hallucinations. There are also combinations of these first two. Sometimes you'll see that. Sorry, guys, my son is back there. Just ignore him. Okay, Rexulti, that is another thing that can be used for agitation associated with Alzheimer's. It doesn't do anything for the disease itself, but it does help with the agitation piece. And anyone who's had to deal with Alzheimer's in your friends, loved ones, family, whatever, you do know that agitation is fairly common with this disease. Rexulti can be very helpful for that. Now, Something pretty promising, also extremely new. So I don't have a lot to say about it, but it is very exciting. I can't wait to see more. And that is lecanemab. This is an anti-amyloid medication. So as I said earlier, 99% of these have not helped at all, blah, blah, blah. This is that one exception that I wanted to talk about. It's an IV infusion given every 2 weeks. It effectively reduces amyloid and can offer a minor slowdown in the decline of memory. Very, very exciting stuff. So maybe we're starting to make a little bit of progress, right? This just came out last year. It has incredibly limited data. I don't have too much that I can say. Like I said, I want to see a lot more information, but at least we're starting to see some movement. Reported side effects are fever, chills, body aches, changes in heart rate and shortness of breath, and also brain swelling and brain bleeds. So many people with Alzheimer's are not able to use this medication, including those with a history of stroke or heart attack, any autoimmune disorder, anyone on blood thinners, anyone with a history of cancer, alcohol, or drug use. So it's hard to see someone make it to age, 75 or 85 who has never had any of these health conditions. So it's very limited who can do this, but for those who can, it is really nice to have another option. Okay, now for your free gift, that is the ebook. If you go to www.regenesisrx.com and click the education tab, you will see your free ebook. I will also post this replay once it becomes available. It usually takes an hour or two for Zoom to convert it all over and all that, but it will be available soon. Make sure that you add my email address to your contacts so you can keep getting notifications about classes. Like the whole debacle yesterday, you guys, which I sincerely apologize for. That was so crazy, but sometimes life happens. I do the best that I can to give you guys plenty of warning about when classes will be and whatnot. I really wanted to avoid Mother's Day because I know so many of you are mothers and are celebrating. But life happens and there's nothing I can do about that. And if you're on the email list, or if you're in the app, you never have to worry. If you're in the app, you know that you've got access to everything. But if you're not in my app, if you're in my email list, I will always send you the replays, the ebooks, all of that stuff. So it really pays to be in there. Okay, let me go ahead and see if we've got any questions. Let's see, chat. Good morning. Hi. Are migraine-related white matter in the brain per an MRI, amyloid plaques, or something different? Migraine-related white matter. To be 100% sure, Jennifer, to be 100% transparent, I'm not sure. So I don't read scans. I read blood work. I will read testing done through like urine and stool samples. I never read scans. It's just not part of my job description. No doctors ever present me with an MRI or an X-ray or anything like that. So honestly, I'm not sure. So I don't want to mislead you and say something incorrect or wrong. So if anyone else knows, please hop on in. I have a lot of lovely nurses and other healthcare providers that are usually present in these classes. So maybe someone else knows, but I don't have that information. And does anyone else have any questions before we shut this down? All right, it looks like that's it. Let me go ahead and stop the recording.